And so if you just continue to ask questions, right? I love the one that I get a lot where people say, well, what do you think we should do here? You know what the greatest leaders respond with? What do you think we should do? Now that may seem like the simplest thing in the world, but that's training your people to think strategically, and to contemplate potential opportunities to attack whatever the issue is. Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. Well, welcome everybody to today's podcast. It is Matt, and today we are here to talk about the art of asking questions. And we're going to deep dive into this topic because it is something that I firmly believe the quality of leader that you become is highly determined by the quality of questions you ask. Right? The higher quality leader you become. And when I'm coaching individuals, when I'm observing workshops with companies, there is something that I see where there's too much telling going on and not enough asking. And there's a scientific part to this. There's also an art part to this. I want to talk about both a little bit today. But again, if we want to achieve the level of leadership that we want, right, to get that promotion and continue to move up in corporations, then we have to have this ask versus tell mentality, right? We have to almost shift it from answering the question to asking the question to get them to perform at the right level. And so I see this a lot, right? That, sometimes in business, I think we, just based on speed, frankly, we feel like when people ask a question, we have to answer like immediately, right now, to get it done and move it forward. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere. And that's true in some circumstances, right? So of course, today I'm generalizing, and every situation is slightly different, but I want to plant the seed in your head, right? But every answer you give, that I want you to just contemplate for a moment that, should I answer with a question or should I answer with a statement? And it's very, very important that you're very clear from a leadership perspective. And that could be a colleague. It might be the team that reports to you, but you have to be very, very clear about how you answer when you get information thrown your way, when you get questions thrown your way. Now, one thing that we teach in the High Performance Leadership Program is this concept of building your leadership philosophy. And we have this 4-step process we take you through to create this movie, paint this picture of like, what are the expectations? How is this coming to life? What do you truly believe in? Like, what's going to make everybody successful on your team and for your organization and function? And I believe unless you have a very, very, very clear leadership philosophy, you can never shift from a reactive state to a proactive state. And that's where we want to shift to so that we can be spending our time as leaders in the places that give us the biggest bang for our buck, drive the most value. And that's part of this leadership philosophy. Well, if, let's say, part of my leadership philosophy is that I believe in empowering and developing and growing the talent around me, then that's where this one component of this concept comes in, right? Then we have to have the ability to ask the right questions at the right time. That is what trains our people to do the right thing at the right time and not, here's the key, and not ask us the question again, right? Because it's about that continuous development and learning. And that's where I see sometimes we feel that telling someone the answer is going to speed up that process, to speed up getting to that answer. And I'm telling you right now, over the long run, I believe that if you tell someone the answer, you are significantly slowing down the process for the long run. Where if we pose the right question, we are training them for the long run. So it's like tell now or ask now. That's the ultimate question. Like, what decisions do I need to make as a leader to have the longest term impact with this employee and with this division? That's what the art of asking questions is all about. Now, there's this other pressure I want to touch on for a moment before I get into this, and I want to go through this retention hierarchy with you. But I talked about kind of that pressure, first of all, to like speed up the process, right? So I feel like we have to like tell someone the answer instead of ask, because we feel like it's going to slow it down. And we feel that pressure, like fast. So I already addressed that one. I think there's this other pressure that I've felt as a leader. I don't know if you have before, but sometimes there's that pressure. Like we feel like we have to know everything about everyone and every process and all these things in case like our boss asks the question. Right? We don't want to look silly if we don't know the answer, all these sorts of things. Well, I firmly believe, first of all, that like there's no way that you know everything about how everything works for your company. And even if you happen to have done it and then you got promoted, like I bet things have even shifted a little bit, right? So the nuances, the perfect like, ins and outs and every little detail, you're probably never going to understand, right? Or there's just not enough time in the day to understand that stuff. So again, like where this pressure comes, we have to know everything. It's like, no, we have to start asking the right questions to understand like how it works, how it flows, know enough information, anticipate the question that's coming, and then we'll be prepared for that, right? Your boss is not going to care if one of your teammates, if they file a paper in the left drawer versus the right drawer. They're not going to care. They're going to care that the paperwork gets filed and you know the paperwork gets filed. So it's just understanding of like, what's the level of information I need to know to be able to deal with that kind of fake pressure, if you will, that might be coming from above. And I always love, you guys have probably heard the Henry Ford story, Ford Motor Company, how some reporter came up to him one time and said, "You have no idea what you're doing. I don't believe you have any idea how to build a car." And he goes, "I'll prove it to you. So bring a bunch of reporters. We'll meet on this day. I'll answer every single question you have. And don't hold back. I'll answer every question." And so these reporters like showed up and they're like, "This will be interesting." And there's Henry Ford sitting at a table with something like 5 telephones in front of him. And they're like, "What's the game here?" And so he's like, "What's your first question?" And so they asked him something and he picked up the phone. He said, "Get me this person on the phone." And they asked that person on the phone the question. He goes, "Here's your answer." That next question. And he did the same thing over and over and over again. And they were sitting there, the reporter saying like, "You don't know how to build a car. Like you're all you do is calling your people." And he said, "My job is to cast the vision. It's the team's job to execute. And if I've surrounded myself with the right people, they should have the answers to those questions." And they did every single time. So from a leadership perspective, like you take that and it's kind of interesting when you really think about that of, what is our job as leaders? Is it to know like every little detail to the, gnats behind, as they say, or is it to orchestrate a team and empower people along the way? That's where asking questions becomes so critical. If you never ask a question, you're never going to train your people to be able to make decisions and empower them to do anything. So with this whole question thing, like I said, I see a lot of people telling instead of asking. And let's talk first about the science behind this, right? I'm sure some of you are asking like, well, what question do I ask and when do I ask it? And is there a format of question I need to ask? And it's funny, my wife told me years ago, she made a comment, she goes, "You're really good at small talk." Right. So if I go to, frankly, like a grocery store, or if I'm going to a networking event or something like that, it appears that I'm really good at talking to people because I'll just ask them a question, start a conversation and things like that. And when she said it, I was a little bit surprised. I'm kind of like, I don't know, never thought of myself as this like amazing conversationalist or something like that. And as we were talking about it, I told her, I said, really the only trick that I have, the process that I follow, if you will, is that I have this genuine curiosity. And as people are talking, I am always just thinking of like, what's the next question or what's something they said that was really interesting that I can ask a question about? Because the reality is people love to talk about themselves. Maybe that's why I started this podcast. I love talking so much. I don't know. Maybe I just uncovered the secret to this podcast, why I started it. But people love talking about themselves. They do, telling stories, where they were born, where they grew up, all these sorts of things. And, I've got my standard ones. If I'm talking to somebody, I'll be like, how's your day going so far? Have you guys been busy? If I'm in a grocery store, I'll always ask with like, "Hey, are you from around here? Where'd you grow up? Like, what sports did you play growing up?" And there's some art to that, like a little science of like, you ask open-ended questions like, is your day going good or bad? Oh, good. Okay. Well, that ends the conversation right there. So there's a little bit of that, and you know how to do that. But I'm curious. I'm always thinking of what's the next question. I just got done with an interview with a gentleman named Bobby Pesavento. He played quarterback for the University of Colorado Buffaloes back in the day, played in NFL and AFL and all those sort of back in the day. And man, I had such a fun conversation with him because I was asking question, because he has the stories. He has the insight. He has the knowledge. He has all these things that I can learn from. And so, heck yes, I'm just going to ask him question after question after question. And it was the same with all these people that I interview for this podcast, for the student athlete program we have. I mean, I just love every aspect of it. And it has to start with genuine curiosity. Like, I'm curious about you. I'm curious about where you grew up. I'm curious about this process. I'm curious about the prospect that we're going after. I'm curious about my colleague. I'm curious about my boss. And sometimes I think we feel this, I don't know, we have to have this perfect process to follow, to ask these sequential questions in this perfect order in order to get the same result or be seen as like, I know what I'm doing. That person has their stuff together, instead of just simply looking at it as like, can I just be genuinely curious about how things work? Now, I was with one of my clients, was it 3 weeks ago now? Yeah, about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And I was talking with the CEO. The team was doing this breakout session. And I found out that his daughter is a swimmer in college and has 2 NIL deals. Now, if you're not familiar with NIL deals, they're the name, image, and likeness deals that all these college athletes and even high school athletes are getting now and signing. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. And so I started asking questions. How does it work? How did she get hooked up with those? How much does she get paid for those? I found out so much that her deals are just product. It's not cash. And the taxation of it. I mean, we were going down this rabbit hole of NIL deals, but I was just genuinely curious of like asking the next question. That's where we have to get to as leaders, of just asking question after question after question, because that unveils the truth, first of all. Second of all, your people know more than they're letting on. I wanted to take a quick break from the podcast to invite you to something very special that we're up to at Matt Phillips Coaching. It's what we call the High Performance Leadership Program. Now, we know that leading people can be challenging. It also can be extremely rewarding. And one thing that I found as you progress in leadership and want to take that next level, get that promotion, continue to move up the ladder, is you have to continually invest in yourself. And you have to set yourselves apart from other people. And you have to continue to not only grow as a leader, but you have to grow your mental toughness, your mindset, because that is the one true differentiator. That's exactly why we built the High Performance Leadership Program, to come alongside you on a monthly basis, to give you the tools, training, and resources, and coaching with me to help you elevate your performance. So I invite you to head over to mattphillipscoaching.com/membership and join us today in the High Performance Leadership Program. Let's make your dreams and your career and your business a reality. And so if you just continue to ask questions, right? I love the one that I get a lot where people say, well, what do you think we should do here? You know what the greatest leaders respond with? What do you think we should do? Now, that may seem like the simplest thing in the world, but that's training your people to think strategically, and to contemplate potential opportunities to attack whatever the issue is. And you do that right, and you do it consistently, they will make the right choice after right choice after right choice, because they know typically what the answer is, right? They're probably just coming to you for validation. Maybe it's super complex and they need help, which you can brainstorm with them, but they typically know, right? And so a lot of times I'll hear like, well, they asked me what to do, and then I got to come up with the answer for them. I'm like, well, not really. You could respond to them, well, what solutions have you thought of? And what say they say, well, I haven't really thought of any. Okay. So I want you to go think of like 2 or 3 ways that we could attack this, and then come back to me. Do you think you can come back in an hour? Is it a day? Like, what is it? I want you to think through this. And let them go away and think through this. Because when they come back, they'll have a much, much better grasp of what the issue is. They will know that you trust them. And it's not to say you take their answers. You may not like what they came up with solution-wise, but it starts like, oh, I see where you were going with this. Like, or walk me through how you thought about this solution versus this solution. See, I'm asking questions again. So you start to understand how they think, how they talk, and then you get some insight into how they're going to react next time. And now you're training them to actually before they talk to you next time, come up with 1, 2, 3 solutions before they show up, because they know you're going to ask that question. This is what I love, the power of asking questions. And it can be more simple than you think. Right? So when we talk about this, like stop telling, start asking, you have to think about it from I'm training them, I'm empowering them, I'm genuinely curious about what they think and how we solution this, how we attack this, how we solve this. And I want to know what's in their brain. Because I do that the right way, the long-term time you save and the impact they're going to have is tremendous. I see it over and over and over again. Right? I had one of our team members tell a story all the time where we're thinking about revamping the website and branding and all these sorts of things. And what was really cool was we kind of had this conversation. And then about, a week later, our teammate comes up to us and says, hey, I've done all this research on these types of people, and this is what I think they could do and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, wow, what amazing initiative. And so we had a conversation about it, and then she followed up with a couple, set up some calls. We had some discussions, things like that. And what ended up happening is, I just asked questions about how does this work? How does that work? What examples do they have? Can I look at some of them? All those sorts of things, because this is a big financial decision for us. And she knocked it out of the park. And it's because A, she prepared, B, she knew a lot more than me, and C, my job was to ask questions, not question her, so we could get to the right answer. It was an amazing process to go through. And so there's that balance that happens. Now, I'm going to give you some advice that I got from one of my coaches that I love. And if you take nothing else away from this podcast today, you need to write this down. And this is what we've done over and over and over again. I think I've said on the podcast before, we also have an athlete side of our business, right? So it's called, we run what's called the Ultimate Student Athlete Leadership Program. We target high school and club coaches. And we've built a plug and play model called the Easy Button for coaches to implement with their student athletes to teach them the mental side of the game, to teach them about becoming leaders on and off the field or on and off the ice, whatever playing surface that are on. And we're going into it, and I was talking to my coach about it, and I said, yeah, we're getting this group of coaches together to figure out what they want, all this sort of stuff. And he said, here's what I want you to do. I've done this so many times. He said, you start with, and grade school alert, everybody, we're going back in time. He said, do you remember, Matt, the who, what, when, where, why, how? Do you remember those, everyone? Who, what, when, where, why, how? He said, I want you to come up with questions under each of those categories, minimum of 3 that you need to ask for the specific project. What do you need answered? And so we went to work. My wife did a list. I did a list separately. And we came back together and combined our lists. And I will tell you, the quality of questions we asked during that session we had with those girls and boys sports coaches was unbelievable. The feedback, to the point of what came out of that was this Ultimate Student Athlete Leadership Program. That was the birth, that meeting of that program that now we're in all sorts of high schools and clubs around the United States. It's incredible, right? That's the brand you might have seen in the past called Pro Athlete Advantage. If you go to proathleteadvantage.com, that is the Student Athlete Leadership Program. Built for coaches, by coaches. But it started with the questions that we asked, because we knew going into that, we needed to ask the right questions to those coaches to get the answers we needed to figure out if this idea we had was actually feasible or if we needed to throw it in the trash and start over. It was unbelievable, right? So when we think of questions, what do I need to ask? When do I need to ask? Simply just go back to who, what, when, where, why, how. It's like grade school. How does this work? What would happen if this? Who needs to be involved in this decision, right? It all goes back to those. And even in prep for a meeting, you can actually sit down and write out questions for each one. Pretty cool, isn't it? Simple. But I'm telling you right now, powerful. I could tell you 5 different stories of 5 different products we've launched that came out of just writing questions on a piece of paper. I kid you not. It's incredible. That's the science behind it. So the science with actual curiosity, that you actually care about that person you're talking to. And I mean, it's amazingly powerful. It's huge. So here's the other thing I want to say about this asking questions piece. And it has to do with the retention hierarchy. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's like how do we as human beings retain information? And what do we need to do to retain it faster? And so I told you at the beginning, like this is also, when you ask the right question, you're training them for the long term, meaning you're having them retain information for the long term. And if you keep telling them, you're going to tell them again and again and again and again, and then you're going to be so super frustrated, which I've been, because you're not looking at this hierarchy. And so this hierarchy, it's pretty interesting. So if you think of a upside down funnel, right, going up, you start at the bottom, and when you tell someone something, the retention is 5%. When you show them something, it's 10%. When you tell and show them, it goes up to 20%. And I'm skipping over a few steps here, right? So now I'm at 20% retention, which is pretty incredible. When you have a discussion about it, an active discussion, now it's up to 50%. When you get them to practice something, it goes up to 75%. And then when you have them teach it to someone else, retention goes up to 90%. And I find this fascinating, right? So how do we take it? And also, it's also shifting it from kind of like inactive learning to active learning. So now I'm actually putting it into practice. That's what we want to do, right? How do we move them up? So when we tell them, the retention is low. So we cannot be surprised when they come back to us and ask us the same question, because they only retained 5% of what we told them in the first place. And so it's moving them up through this hierarchy, like telling, showing, telling and showing, having a discussion about it, having them practice it, and then ultimately having them teach someone else. That's the power of like development of individuals, right? But that comes back to asking questions. If I ask a question, I can have a discussion about it. That means I'm already at like 50% retention. If I tell someone to do it, I'm stuck at 5%. I think that's mind-blowing. I think it's incredible. That's the power of asking questions. So your focus, I want really to be after this podcast from here on out, is when people approach you about something, is to contemplate for a minute, like, should I answer this question, like tell them? Or is there a question I can ask in this moment to train them, to learn more information, to figure out how to train them to think for the long term with your team? It's darn incredible when you start thinking about that. And if you take that approach, if you take that focus, you automatically will begin in the who, what, when, where, why, how format to really increase the quality of those questions, which means you're increasing the quality of your leadership, which means you're increasing the quality of your impact. That's what we're here to do, right? You want that promotion. You want, to get that next opportunity. You want that big project. You want that big sale. It all starts with the questions you ask. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion on the art of asking questions today. And again, feel free, add a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So leave a comment on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere about your thoughts around this, and maybe a story about how the art of asking questions has helped you in your leadership role or with training and empowering your team. I would absolutely love to hear them. All right. Last thing before I let you go, I always like to say, listen, you want to improve as a leader and get that promotion and get that next opportunity, you have to constantly train. And we've built a tool for you. So go check out the High Performance Leadership Program. You can go to mattphillipscoaching.com/membership. Check it out. And we hope to see you inside. And with that, have a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you for taking your time on this podcast. And we will see you on the next one. Have a good day. Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator: mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.